That, in case you didn't recognize it, was Horsted Keynes Station on the Bluebell line in Sussex. And this is a 00 gauge model of Horsted Keynes Station made for us in the last program by Jack Kine. Now, it has since been wired up and signaled by Stuart Hine. Stuart, how do you go about wiring up a layout?
If you only want to operate one locomotive at a time, all you need to do is to join 2 wires to the 2 rails anywhere on the layout, and your rail joiners do the rest. I've already drilled 2 little holes in the baseboard, close to the rail. I've pushed a wire up through one of them and tinned a spot on the rail base to accept it. Now all I have to do is to apply a little bit of cord solder and soldering iron, and just hold it in place for a few seconds till the solder sets.
Any snags or difficulties here?
Well, of course, the dreaded dry joint.
How do you avoid it?
By making sure your iron is hot enough so that you heat the job up properly, and by not pulling on the wire to see if the solder has set yet.
Well, that much for a plain straight line. Now, let's talk about points, or to give them a proper name, turnouts. How do you operate them?
The ones we used have a little over-centre spring, which leaves them in the position in which you set them. So provided you can reach them from the control position, you can just set them by hand, and the blades do the electrical switching as well.
But I see here you have an electrical switch operating a turnout. Why is that?
Because it's easier to get hold of, it gives you a wider choice of contact arrangements, and it's much more reliable.
Well, that's one way of doing it. What other methods have you got?
Where the turnouts are fairly near the control position, I like to use the wire-in-tube method.
Ah, that is a very fine wire operating in a copper or plastic tube. And that wire operates the actual switch blades.
That's right. I like to use these radio rotary switches and modify the mechanism to push and pull the wire.
Yes.
You have a nice choice of contact arrangements on the back, and the knob forms part of the track diagram.
And talking about track diagrams, let's have a look at ours. And here are the tracks of our model of Horsted Keynes Station neatly drawn out on the track diagram with a variety of electrical controls superimposed on them. This, for instance, is a point switch operating an electric point. Let's see it work. And next to it, we've got a switch isolating a little track dead end here, like this. If you switch it off, you can leave a loco standing on it without energizing it. Next to it, we've got a switch that provides power to the south or the north end of the layout, and this switch operates a signal. Let's see it work. There we are. Stuart, what makes a signal work?
Well, this one's got a little miniature relay mounted underneath with a piece of fine wire running up through the post to operate the arm. If you move the switch, you'll see it move.
That's extremely neat and simple. Have you got much more to do?
Only the signals at the other end. I've just got to connect them up, and I'm going to do that now.
While Stuart's finishing off the wiring, let's have a look at some locomotives and rolling stock. Now, in the more popular gauges, you can virtually buy your train off the shelf. But if you're a bit more ambitious, you may want to build your own vehicles from kits. Now, someone who's built kits and modified kits for many years is Robert Ormiston-Chant. Now, Robert, what sort of kits are available?
You can have kits which are printed on card, or you can have them of plugged-together parts which are ready-made for you. Or you can assemble them from injection molded plastic parts, or you can assemble them from cast metal parts, and finally you can assemble them from hard metal parts which are stamped and formed for you.
Well, Robert, let's start straight away with a plastic kit just as it comes out of the box.
Yes.
How do you put it together?
Well, the first thing you must do is cut it from the runners which give rise to each individual part. And for this you use a curved knife and a block of wood as a support to avoid damaging any of the frail parts of the kit.
Now what next?
And then after this is the end of the band that I'm cutting now.
Yes.
You then cement them together with a plastic solvent.
How long does that take to dry, incidentally?
About 10 seconds for you to handle it. and you use a small block of wood to make sure that you've got the two parts square together.
That's very simple and neat. Now, when the vehicle's finished, in its unpainted form, it looks like this. It's quite smart, it's got lots of detail on it, but obviously you've got to paint it and turn it into your own. And this is, of course, a good example of what a vehicle looks like when you make it your own. This one is built out of two separate kits, two separate van bodies, its own underframe under here, and its own running gear, if you care to look, and naturally its own lettering. So you can virtually turn kits into your own vehicles if you want to. And finally, of course, you can turn them into locomotives. That's a locomotive made from a plastic kit. But you've got some metal over there. Robbo, what's this?
This is a grain wagon, and made of cast metal parts, which are fitted together by filing them until they exactly fit.
It's a sort of precision fitting.
You
job.
have to take much more care than with the ordinary model, the ordinary plastic model.
And how can you join them?
You can join them with epoxy resin, cement, or with an impact adhesive, or you can use the special low-temperature solders.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer to use the solders because they give a neater joint and a much stronger one.
Difficult?
No, they're quite easy to do, but you must be careful not to melt the soft metal of the parent kit.
So all you've got to do really is to run the solder in here now.
Yes, it will flow into the joint quite easily, and you'll see how neat the joint is.
It goes together very, very simply and very quickly. Now let's have a look at some completed vehicles. There they are. That's a 20-ton coal vehicle. Then there's a bit of coaching stock here. And, of course, a locomotive. And this one looks extremely smart. It's a kit, but it's very nicely put together, and it really is a nice loco to have. But let's have a look at these bits here. What are they?
But these are stamped out of nickel silver and turned from brass, and some of them are pressed up into shape.
And that gives you, finally, when you've completed it,
It gives you a tank locomotive looking like this. It's assembled with ordinary Tinman solder, and you have to make and fit quite an amount of detail yourself, such as this sandbox, or this toolbox, there's the injector, and the handrails.
of course, the next stage is building entirely from scratch. Just take a look at these models. You see a pair of private owner vehicles. The left one has been in service some time, it's a bit dirty, and the right one's brand spanking new, straight out of paint shops, looking absolutely resplendent. And then this very fine Great Western auto coach, beautiful with every detail. Even the windows are down. Well, it's always summer in the Great Western country. And then, of course, to crown it all, a king. And that is magnificent. If you think it's all in 00 gauge, very, very small, just look at the front end. It's got everything on it, all the details. I am really envious of that one. At this point, let's go back to our Horsted Keynes model and run some trains. Over to you, Stuart.
Well, it looks like summer in Brighton Line country as well today. Here we've got an up semi-fast Brighton to Victoria train, and she's just waiting to pick up a few passengers off a stopper from East Grinstead to Lewis, which is just coming in under the bridge now.
Oh, yes, she's coming down nicely, Stuart. I see she's got a milk van on. What's she going to do with that?
She's going to drop that one off here.
Oh, yes, she's making a connection now.
Yes. Just a couple of minutes wait for the passengers to get through the subway. Watch the starting signal.
Ah, there she
There it
goes.
goes, and she's away.
Beautiful, lovely day, and she's all the way up to London. What happens next, Stuart?
The milk van's been uncoupled, and she's just drawing forward into the siding. Throw the turnouts. Back her up to the loading dock.
And now?
Uncouple. Draw forward again.
You're going back onto
Throw
the
the
train.
turnouts once more. Put her back on the train.
Are you ready to couple up now?
Yes.
What happens now?
Well, any moment now, we'll resume our rather leisurely way down the Bluebell line towards Lewis. There goes the starter signal. And we're off.
Down our branch line now.
Yes.
Now let's stay at Horsted Keynes for just one more train movement, Stuart. What's next?
I think there's another Brighton train due any moment. Yes, here she comes now.
Our Horsted Keynes layout is obviously an indoors layout, but there are many models who run their railways outdoors, in the garden. And the most popular way of propelling them is by steam. It's Peter Howland raising steam on his Duchess. He's filling up water into the tender. Distilled water is usually the best thing. Just pumping a little into the boiler, making sure the bypass is open. That's right, just a little water in the boiler is always a good thing. And now charcoal. Charcoal soaked in meths makes a very good base for the fire. Starts it very easily. It's a nice wide box, it shouldn't be difficult. And now the blower. That creates artificial draft. Match in and it's away. It doesn't take long. There's enough steam to go on our own blower now. And now coal, anthracite grains actually, just to cover the fire. Yes, the gauge is rising a bit. Ah, it looks much better. Now proper coal on it. She's ready to back onto the carriages. Isn't it a lovely garden? The right setting for a railway. It couldn't be more beautiful. No garden's complete without one of these. Through the Howland station. And that's the rest of us trying to steam up. But there's an older way of propulsion. It's clockwork. That's hand-wound. It's the oldest way, and it's beautiful. Another form of propulsion, a Southern Electric train. Actually picks up its juice from the third rail. Easily controllable and very amenable. There she comes and stops beautifully in the station. Latest form of propulsion, accumulator electric locos with their accumulators in the loco themselves, electronically controlled, powerful, very amenable and easy to drive. And that's the diesel electric. I claim authorship to this one. It's a Type 4. I'm just setting the controls, making sure compression's right. And now on with the body. It's quite easy to fit it on. Just 4 screws. Starter battery on, set it for the right position. Starting, check the throttle, press the button, and off she goes. Scratch building your own loco or rolling stock is obviously not for the raw beginner, but neither is it as frightening as many people may think. All you need is access to some machine tools. Look at this. A small lathe, perfectly competent little lathe, a little pillar drill like that, brazing torch and a hearth, tool chest, and even then it's not necessary to have any of this to build a little loco like that. You can always go to one of the many evening classes held specially for model engineers. This might look like a machine shop in a factory, but in fact it's an evening class at the St. Albans College of Further Education. Here's a chap setting up a lathe. We're just facing off a piece of metal. And that's a loco wheel. And this character's machining on the tread. That's fly cutting on a milling machine. He's getting a clean surface on a cylinder block or something that needs to be absolutely flat. And not to forget the most important art of all, filing. Measuring up the footplate of a locomotive. It's a very busy scene here. Everybody's doing something. It's a little marine engine, which is obviously being tested out. Just seeing how free it is. Plugs going in the back head of a boiler, ready for water testing. And now the front end going onto a loco. And once a loco is completed, it needs to be tried out. This is a live steam meeting of the North London Society of Model Engineers. You can just see the water going in the tender. Pumping up here is a much bigger job. And even shoveling in coal just shows. Got a nice head of steam and enough water. And this is a 3.5-inch gauge loco being moved over the track. And they're using a very ingenious way of railing it. You can see it's a dual-purpose track. The outer track is for 5-inch gauge, the inner for 3.5. And here comes the 5-inch gauge loco. Using the same re-railer. See how much bigger she is. Once on the track, she now backs up to her driving truck. And it's such a very, very large gauge that you've got to ride on the truck, straddling it, to be able to drive your locomotive. There they are, ready to take a train of passengers. 3 passengers after a test run. Pulling hard now. It's a lovely point of view, sitting behind your own loco and really driving it. I think that moment you really made it.